Hey y'all, I'm Hope, and today I'm going to be doing the end of year book tag. I'm really planning this to just be like a really chill video, and by planning I mean there was no planning at all whatsoever that happened for this. I just grabbed some stuff off my shelves and decided to sit down and do this. I just thought this would be a kind of fun way to reflect on where I'm at with my reading right now and kind of think through what I want to prioritize going into the end of the year. So that's really why I wanted to do this, and this is just going to be a chill video, so like grab yourself a cup of tea or something. We're just going to chat for a few minutes. And I think I'm just going to go ahead and dive into the questions. The first one here is, are there any books you've started this year that you need to finish? The answer to that is so many. I have so many books I need to finish that I've started this year. But I just decided to pull out a few of my kind of top priority books to talk about. So up first, I have Docile by Cam Sparra. I'm listing this here in part because I think this is maybe the book I'm currently reading that's been there the longest at this point. I believe I started this in like February or March or something, but I read most of the book. I actually only have like 100 pages left, and then I just, for whatever reason, I don't understand why, I just kind of set it down and stopped reading it. But I was really fascinated by this book. It's very dark. I always want to say I'm enjoying it, but I don't think that's really the right phrase because it is a very dark book. But the character is really interesting. There's a lot of really interesting kind of moral and ethical questions in here. The tagline for the book is "There is no consent under capitalism," which I think pretty much encapsulates what this book is about. But I don't know why I set it aside. I just really need to get back to it. And then similarly, one I started around the same time, although a little bit later, is Winter's Orbit by Everina Maxwell, which is a kind of character-focused romantic sci-fi with a kind of murder mystery plot engine thing going on. So it's following Janin and Kiem, who are these two men that get pushed into a political marriage when Janin's husband dies. And then partway through the first couple of chapters, they realize that Janin's husband was probably murdered, and so they get kind of caught up both in the political situation surrounding their forced marriage and also in a kind of investigation into Janin's former husband's death. So there's a lot of interesting things happening here. I think the world building of this book is a little bit flat, but I really like the characters in here. I particularly like Janin. I think this is a very Janin-centric book. It really is about Janin's growth over the course of the story at its core, but I don't think that's a bad thing. I really like Janin. I think he's well written. I think Kiem is well written, and I do really want to get back to this because I would love to actually finish it and find out what the solution to the murder mystery is. So similar to Docile, it's been sitting around for like far too long, and I just need to get back to it. And then kind of the last priority book that I want to get back to is Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse, which is a like pre-Columbian inspired fantasy that's following four characters as a series of events are converging upon the city of Tova, which is like the kind of capital city in this world. And all of these events are occurring around this upcoming eclipse, which has been predicted to be an unbalancing of their world. So there's all these people kind of converging on Tova across the story. At the point that I've read to, which is about 150 pages in, I've met 3 of the 4 POV characters, so there's a 4th one that I don't know anything about. But the ones that I had met already, I was really liking, particularly Ziala. She's just super interesting, and there's a lot of interesting like commentary and politics around who she is, because she is from this group of people called the Teak, who have the ability to like use song to control the waters, and I believe they can also like control people to some extent as well. So there's a lot of interesting things happening with that. Serapio is really interesting. Naranpa is the priestess character. I know a lot of people from the reviews I've read don't like Naranpa all that much, but I think she's really fascinating, and there's a really interesting political situation happening with her where she's trying to like maintain power in an increasingly fraught position. So I am really excited to get back into this one, and I really do want to read this one before the end of the year. This was also gifted to me by my partner, and I would like to finish it so that I can say that I've actually finished one of the books he's given me. He's given me several, and I'm just terrible at getting around to things because I'm such a mood reader, but I would like to get to this one before the year ends. So those are kind of like my priority plans for that. Then the next question is, do you have an autumnal book to transition into the end of the year? And I've chosen The Wolf and the Woodsman by Ava Reed. I really don't know a lot about this book. I know that it involves like Jewish mythology and Hungarian folklore, which I think sounds very cool. I don't know a lot about those things, so I think that this will be really interesting to read. It'll be different from other things I've read. But I've heard that this is very like spooky and dark, and to me that's like the perfect kind of book for fall and winter. I really like kind of dark fantasy, horror, mysteries, that kind of thing in fall and winter. So this sounds to me like it's going to be a perfect autumnal book for me, and I'm really excited to get into it. Also, I think this is the Illumicrate edition, and I just really like this cover with like the gray and reds. Although I do also really like the original, which is like blue and orange and stuff. But I really like this cover, and I really can't wait to get to this, which is good because it's actually on my November TBR, so like it works out. And then the next question is there a new release you're still waiting for? I have kind of two to mention here. One is Our Violent Ends, which is the second half of the These Violent Delights duology by Chloe Gong. I read These Violent Delights a couple of months ago and was surprised at how much I liked it, just given that I'm not like a huge Romeo and Juliet fan, and it is a retelling of Romeo and Juliet. But I think that her version of it was much more interesting than the original. But that's just a me thing, and I think that has to do with the fact that I read it in class in like 9th grade in English. So I don't think I had a great first experience reading it. So I really did enjoy Chloe Gong's version of this, and kind of reading it and like figuring out who the different characters are supposed to be and looking for the kind of similar plot beats to the original. So I thought it was fantastic, and I am really looking forward to the sequel. I'm probably going to pick that one up as soon as I get it, because I just really need to know what happens, to be honest. The other one that I'm kind of waiting on, that I'm not entirely certain if I'm going to be excited for it or not yet, is Jade Legacy, which is the conclusion to the Greenbone saga. I'm currently reading Jade City right now, and my library loan ends tomorrow. But joke's on them, I also checked out the audiobook, but I got it later. So I'm going to try and get through it before my loan on the audiobook also ends, but we shall see if I manage that. Otherwise, I may end up needing to like put a hold back on it and wait to get it again. But anyway, I'm like at the 50% marker, a little past that, and I am absolutely loving it so far. I think it's really fascinating the way that like the book is very focused on relationship dynamics and like the politics between people, but it's conveying that in a really fast-paced, action-y story. So I think that that's really cool. I think it's really well done, and I am hopefully going to get through Jade City soon. And if I get to Jade War in time, then yes, I'll be waiting for Jade's Legacy when it comes out. But otherwise, I may have to wait a while to read it. Okay, what's next? What are 3 books you want to read before the end of the year? Okay, so I think I have several sitting over here on my desk. I think my top priority is A Desolation Called Peace by Katie Martine. This is another duology conclusion. It's the second book in the Texkalon duology, which begins with A Memory Called Empire. And I'm very excited to get to this because A Memory Called Empire was one of my favorite books of last year. I think that our Katie Martine's writing is extremely poetic, and I think her character work and her world building are just really, really, really well done. I'm really shocked because A Memory Called Empire is her debut novel, and it doesn't read at all like a debut, I think. So I loved it. It was one of my favorite books of last year. I read the whole thing in 24 hours during a 24-hour readathon, which felt a little like a fever dream, but like in a good way. And I turned around and pre-ordered this immediately when I realized that it was coming out at the beginning of this year. I got it in March, and at the time I was taking classes, and I couldn't get to this one. So it's been sitting here waiting for me, and I just like really needed to get to it before the year ends. I think this book also opens up the world a little bit because the first book is very stuck in the protagonist's head. It's Mahit. It's just one POV, and I think this book has several, so I'm gonna get to like learn more about the world from a bunch of different perspectives, and I really enjoy that kind of thing in books, especially in like really big fantasy and sci-fi worlds like this, so I'm super excited. And then up next, I've got The Silence of Bones by June Her, which is a historical mystery set in 1800 Korea. And it's following a young woman, she's like 16, I think, and she's orphaned and she's indentured to the police bureau. She gets partnered up with this detective to investigate a murder, and as time goes on, it starts to look like he's the prime suspect. But she's formed a friendship with this detective, and she ends up needing to use her kind of like limited resources to try and clear his name. And I just think this sounds like it's going to be fantastic. I absolutely love historical mystery, and I'm also always really fascinated by books that have like a strong friendship at the core of them. I read a lot of books that have romances as kind of like the core relationship, and I do really enjoy those, but I always think it's really fun when I come across something that does a like core friendship instead. So I am really, really excited to get to this one. Junher also has a book called The Red Palace coming out in January. I feel like my enunciation that was weird. The Red Palace, which comes out in January and is also a Korean historical mystery and also sounds fantastic. So I really want to read this one before the year ends so that I can just have like a sense of what her writing is like before I get The Red Palace. And then I think the third one I want to mention here is My Heart is a Chainsaw by Stephen Graham Jones. This is another one where a book by this author is one of my favorites. Similarly to Memory Called Empire, I read The Only Good Indians last year, which was his previous novel release, and it is definitely one of my favorite books. It has really stuck with me. I think about this book like weekly, and I read it almost exactly a year ago. So I'm really excited to dive into this one. I think that this one I may struggle to get into just a little bit because I know this is very much like an homage to slasher movies, and I've only just kind of recently started watching slasher movies, so I suspect there's going to be a lot of references that go over my head, but that's okay. I know that I really like his writing and his characters. Those are really the things that stuck with me from The Only Good Indians, so I'm very excited to get into this one as well. And then next question is there a book you think could still shock you and become your favorite book of the year? Absolutely. If I can lift all of them now, from the way I've set them down here, I think that any one of these could very easily be my new favorite of the year. I like these bottom three, which I've already started reading, absolutely loved them. Heard great things about The Wolf and the Woodsman. Desolation Called Peace is a sequel to a favorite. Silence of Bones is like right up my alley. It's exactly my jam in historical mysteries. And also, I know that I've loved a previous book by Stephen Graham Jones. So like all of these, I think have a strong chance of being my new favorite of the year. So lots and lots of options. And then the very last question is, have you already started making reading plans for next year? And no, not really. I think I've already said this in this video. I'm very much a mood reader. I struggle to like plan super far ahead because I will make a plan and then I will not be in the mood for that plan when it gets time to do it. So I just don't like to plan that far ahead in terms of reading. The one thing I am planning is to do a buying ban, and I've kind of already like soft launched that, where basically I'm doing a kind of read 10 buy 1 thing, but I have like a marble jar, and at the end of every month I'm going to count up the number of books that I've read that month that were from my like current owned personal library, and for each one of those I'm going to put a marble in the jar. When I have 10 marbles, I can buy a new book. I also get an extra marble if I do like a couple of challenges every month, which I pick at the beginning of the month. So it allows me to do like a little bit of planning ahead, but also will hopefully like reduce my buying a lot. So that's basically the only plan I have. But it looks like those are all of the questions, and I did really enjoy this tag. I think this is an interesting way of like reflecting and kind of figuring out what to prioritize. So I'm actually really happy with this stack as like my priorities for the end of the year, and I think that it's very doable. So yeah, I think this tag is really cool. Anyway, I hope you've enjoyed this video, and I would love to hear from you in the comments what you think of this setup too, since this is very chill. I know the lighting is not great. My ring light is over here, but you know, I tried. But yeah, thank you so much for watching. I hope if you've enjoyed this video, you'll consider giving it a like, maybe even subscribing to see what comes next. I am currently posting every Saturday, so there is new content coming soon. And yeah, I hope to see you in the next video. Bye!